Good day, everyone. My name is Charlie C. Duhali from the Philippines. Um, the research that I'm going to discuss today is entitled No Language is an Island, a systematic literature review on qualitative studies pertaining to the linguistic hybridity in the Philippines. It has been done by me and my professor, Mei Ing Chen. So, here are the table of contents. Um, 1. Abstract. 2. Introduction. 3. Methodology. 4. Results and discussion. 5. Conclusion. This is the abstract of this study, and actually I will skip this one due to the limitation of my time. Um, okay, let's head over with the next slide. Introduction. Introduction. What is the function of history? To answer this question, first separate it from the temporal scales and explain why it is favored site of study. History on this study is special in a way that it examines the change over time in the language situation of the Philippines. Likewise, social history contributes to a clear understanding of various fields, and linguistics is no exemption. According to Vygotsky, 1986, communication is the driving force underlying speech in both adults and children. Speech is social in its early phases in children. This serves as a single function and is multi-purpose. Due to social historical circumstance, it is later separated into egocentric speech and communicative speech. Thus, Piaget 1970 thinks that early children are inquisitive and actively involved in their own learning as well as the discovery and development of the new surrounding understandings or schema. Vygotsky, on the other hand, emphasized social inputs to the development process, whereas Piaget highlights on self-initiated discovery. Methodology of the study. On paper selection, the method of this article is the systematic literature review. The source of literature on this review was Google Scholar Index Database, a freely accessible web search engine that indexes the full text or metadata of scholarly literature across an array of publishing formats and disciplines. It is limited on qualitative journal articles in an effort to review the study for more consistent quality. Systematic reviews may benefit by synthesizing prior work, informing practice, and by identifying important new directions for research, according to Borrego and others, 2014. For data collection, the researchers applies Google Scholar Application Programming Interface or API to narrow down the title, author, and abstract in Publish or Perish application by Harzing 2007. The procedures to identify the qualitative articles of this study can be classified into four stages. In the first stage, three sets of keywords were organized for searches using Boolean operator and including linguistic hybridity and Philippine languages, socio-history and languages, as well as Philippine language and education. So here are the steps of systematic literature review, and there were four steps: identification first, screening, eligibility, and inclusion. So in the next stage, the researchers manually and systematically screen the article titles and abstract, and to confirm that the selected articles do not include qualitative studies that might pose a conflict to the entire research. The selected articles were all qualitative studies from 2002 to 2017 pertaining to the linguistic hybridity in the Philippines. Eventually, five articles were identified as the research sample of this review. The content analysis was preliminarily coded based on its learning topics to specify different aspects of linguistic hybridity in the Philippines. Coding. The content analysis is comprised of three stages. In the first stage, the content of a selected paper was preliminarily coded based on its socio-historical relevance to specify different aspects that is examined during the conduct of the linguistic hybridity in the Philippines. The researcher code the specified article using Atlas.Ti 9 to make it easier to analyze qualitative data between research articles. In the second stage, all papers of different framework then coded for the research questions or purpose. In the last stage, through cross-examination of the research questions or purpose and the historical situation identified in each paper, several thematic linkages were generated which describe how the socio-historical studies were connected to the linguistic hybridity in the Philippines. Um, in Figure 2, the framework between social history and linguistic hybridity in the Philippines. So this is the framework. Results and discussion. In a results and discussion, the researchers systematically narrates the important socio-historical situation and the language situation in the Philippines in different time periods. Since the primary focus of this paper is to highlight the influence of history in language hybridity, the authors divides the historical narrative into six time periods. And in Figure 3, shows the landmarks in the linguistic social history of the Philippines. Here we have two sets of tables, one from historical situation and the other is language situation. So pre-colonial, the language situation during that time is baybayin as a usual system of writing. So the in sec in Spanish application in Spanish occupation, the language situation on that time is Spanish as an exclusive language. Mother tongue is inferior among the languages. The existence of Chino-Tagalog Spanish as a common jargon in this era. Chino-Tagalog Spanish is the combination of three languages such as Chinese, Tagalog, and Spanish. In 1890, Tagalog as language of mass announcements. So, in American era, from 1898 to 1946, the language situation during that time is English as an official language, English as a language of the livelihood, and in 1921, Mandarin as prescribed language, Hokkien as a popular language, and possible emergence of Philippine Hokkien and Philippine hybrid Hokkien. So in 1935, Spanish and English as an official language of the Philippines. So in post-colonial era, 1946 to 1945. So in 1946, English as a language of controlling domains, and Tagalog and English as a medium of instruction, and Taglish combination of Tagalog and English as a lingua franca. And in 1960, Chinese schools persecution due to language differences. So, martial law era, 1965 to 1986. So, the in 1965, Tagalog or Filipino taught at schools and Chinese subjects are optional. So, in 1970, the use of Hokkien varieties dominant at home. 1973, Chinese as a minority group. 1973, Philippinization of foreign schools. 1973, Mandarin as international language. 1974, English as a language of mass media and higher class people. And in 1975, the mass naturalization of Chinese as Filipinos based on Letter of Instruction number 270, Presidential Decree number 836, etc. In 1976, adaptation of Chinese curriculum into Philippine curriculum in 1979, Taglish as a language of common people. And the last era was the Fifth Republic, 1986 to present. 1987, implementation of bilingual education policy. 1987, English and Filipino as an official language. 1987, propagation of Filipino as a language of literacy. And the same year also, Filipino as a linguistic symbol of national unity and identity. So 1992, rebellion against Chinese languages. 1993, further diversity of Chinese Filipinos. And in 2004, English as a language of wider communication, aptitude, and competitiveness. Constant revision of bilingual education policy according to the recent curriculum. And in conclusion, linguistic hybridity has played an important part in the growth of the Philippine economy. Filipinos were able to learn how to adapt to each colonizer because of the several eras of colonial control. This provided them the opportunity to be persuaded, which contributed directly to the Filipinos' rapid embrace of English and other languages because it has enabled them to seize countless economic possibilities in 21st century. Linguistic hybridity has also resulted in cultural divergence in the country. As more Filipinos become global wanderers, acknowledge the world rather will soon acknowledge their adaptability. They will be always famous of that quality, and it may provide Filipino people with the trade and culture that is ahead of its time. So that would be all. Thank you so much and have a great day.